So.
I'll get you started. Okay, let's begin the meeting. The Lehigh County Authority Board of Directors meeting, June 24th, 2024. Welcome everybody. This meeting is being recorded and will be available on our website. Let's do a roll call of the Board of Directors first.
Got it. Roll call of the board. Brian Noggle.
Here.
Amir Famili.
Here.
Ted Lyons.
Here.
Jeff Morgan.
Here.
Norma Cusick.
Here.
Kevin Baker. Linda Rosenfeld. Sean Ziller. Mark Bramis. We do have 5 board members present, so that is a quorum.
All right, thank you. Hopefully the others show up. All right, packets, board packages were mailed out in advance and also available electronically. Anybody has any questions on that? I guess there was a change. We discussed that information was passed out at a more forward date.
The one, the memo relating to the 2024 staffing additions was distributed a couple days on Wednesday, a couple days late, but it's posted to the whole packet.
All right, and that did change the page numbers on the packet that we originally got in the mail. So we hopefully everybody's updated that. All right, let's review the agenda for today's meeting. Any need for executive session or any changes to the additions to the agenda?
No changes or additions to the agenda today and no executive sessions today.
Okay. Any questions? All right, then we move to the approval of the minutes from the June 10th, 2024 Board of Directors meeting.
So I reviewed the minutes. I did not see any changes to be recommended, and I'll make a motion that they be accepted.
I second. Right, motion by Jeff and seconded by Amir. Are there any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. At this time, we open up the floor to any public comments on any topics that are not on the agenda. Do we have any comments?
No, thanks, Brian. And FYI, Brian Chamberlain is out today.
Okay, thank you, Jenny.
Thank you.
Any other comments? All right, then we're moving on to the action and discussion items. We have one item under Finance Administration. It's the 2024 staffing additions. It's for discussion and approval. It is a digital board packet, pages 8 to 11. It is white documents. Our board packet, I guess.
All right, I have a brief presentation. Presentation is posted on our website as well. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we can walk through this. Presentation generally follows the flow of the what's in your packet, the memo as well. So the purpose of having this item on the agenda today is for us to walk through the staffing additions that have been recommended by the team following a fairly extensive review of what our future needs are and really taking a deeper look at the future project workload that's coming our way and trying to get ourselves to be prepared for that. We go through a few key drivers and some background as well. So just to put it in context, since 2013, I don't think it makes sense to look at LCA prior to 2013. We were a much different organization at that time, much smaller kind of organization prior to the lease with Allentown. But since we undertook the lease with Allentown in 2013, really grown the organization and transformed in a lot of different ways. Over the 11 years that we've been operating in Allentown, we've added 22 additional positions. That's above like where we landed in 2013.
What was that?
We started at about 158 and we're now at 181 in terms of budgeted positions. So where we started with the 158 was all what we consider the original LCA pre-lease employees, plus the 100 or so employees who came over from Allentown. And then right on day one, in August of 2013, we added some core functions like HR and purchasing and positions we just didn't have because of the size of our organization prior to the lease. So we started at 158. We've added 23 new positions over that time period, and I've listed generally where they fit within the organization. And I thought that was a good exercise. Actually, Amir made a comment at the last meeting that made me think about where have we been adding these positions? What does it look like? And I think it's fair to say we've been focusing on adding positions in sort of the core competency areas of the organization, operation and maintenance, customer service, billing and collections, and then some positions primarily in, I'll say, administrative support and HR and finance as well. So we've been really focused on just building the core competencies of the organization to function as a well-run utility, maintaining our systems and providing the support for employees that we need every day. So we have seen that growth and wanted to be open about that. In the more recent years, really looking at the last 2 or 3 or 4 years, we've seen a lot of change as well and growth in an expansion in what we're focused on. Our strategic plan that was adopted in December of 2028 created some additional focus in the areas that are shown on the screen, like regional collaboration and driving more into the realm of operational excellence, employee engagement, safety for sure. And we also created the new mission and vision statements, which I think have been driving forces for some of our strategy over the last few years. So these have been keeping us really busy, but there's been a lot of new stuff on top of just what the goals we set out for ourselves. There's been a lot of new things that have happened in the last 3 years or so. Specifically, we've been talking quite a bit about most of these, the lead program, regional sewer planning that's going to transition into implementation of a large number of projects. We've had changing regulations to talk about PFAS and things of that nature. That's really all kind of come to an expanding project workload for the Capital Works team and many other departments. And the result of that being the increase in costs to the organization and the increase in rates as well, which creates some need to manage that and look at that in a different way. I'm going to go through these kind of one by one, give you some context. I don't think this is new. I think we've heard about these before, but sort of trying to package it together so we can get a scope of what we're facing. Under the lead program in 2021, EPA proposed a new rule, and then they proposed a new rule again in the last few months to try to refine how the federal statute will work in terms of removing lead from water systems. And the lead replacement program is a cornerstone piece of what EPA is doing with lead in drinking water. It's very different from the prior approach. So essentially, EPA has said that in the next 10 years or 10 years from the date the rule becomes final, utilities have a 10-year time period to remove lead service lines from the system on both the private side and the public side. So the portion that LCA owns from the street to the curb, as well as the portion that the customer owns from the curb into the house. And you can see some of the numbers on the screen of what we have in Allentown. We have, rough numbers, 15,000 public and 15,000 private side that will need to be addressed. They're either known to be lead, known to be requiring replacement, or we don't know what the material is because our database is incomplete. If they're considered unknown, we have to treat them as if they're lead and either identify them or depending on the result. So it's a significant workload to address the lead service lines. And if you can just imagine the detailed level of work with customer interaction, customer agreements, getting into each and every home individually, it just takes a lot of manpower to address this kind of program.
And Lisa, how long until we would complete the work on that list of?
Well, we'll have 10 years from the date that the rule becomes final, which October of this year is what we're expecting. There's a compliance period thereafter. So we're looking at 10 to 12 years roughly to have all the lead service lines out of the system. We're just scratching the surface now with the projects that we've been authorizing and working on now, the first phase happening this year. Moving on to the Act 537 or the Regional Sewer Plan. This is a slide I've been using at public meetings throughout the Lehigh County over the past 6 months or so to illustrate the scope of the projects that are going to be included in the Regional Act 537 plan. These projects will, once we put them in the plan and get the plan approved, we're expected to complete the projects through 2035. And as you can see, the projects really have a wide range of types. So we're talking about plant upgrades at Klein's Island, some form of major plant upgrade at the pretreatment plant, large new interceptors running cross country or alongside the Little Lehigh Creek, and then municipal sewer rehab programs throughout the communities that we serve. So roughly $600 million worth of work is estimated to be completed in that time period. And LCA will be at the helm of trying to provide leadership for completing pretty much everything that's on this screen. And then just on top of that is all the regular work that we're doing. This is a summary from last year's 5-year capital plan. So in a 5-year time period, we had estimated $261 million worth of work that Chuck and his team are going to drive forward on. And those range from some of the projects that are included here include some lead funding and sewer projects, but also main replacements that are required, dealing with aging infrastructure, facility upgrades to address resilience for the aging systems that we have. So significant project work, workload increase, and also addressing PFAS in drinking water systems. I don't think that any of that is new to this board, but wanted to show kind of comprehensively what we're facing in terms of project workload, and then also recognize the impact on rates and the way our customers will be impacted. This is a graph that I showed during the budget season, which includes the 2024 rates that LCA has adopted and how they compare in other communities across the Lehigh Valley. You can see that we have rates that are on the lower end of the spectrum. And then we have rates that are more in the middle. That's where City of Allentown rates are. And then we have rates that are on the higher end of the spectrum as well. Those are smaller systems in northern Lehigh County where we don't have the customer base to spread the costs across. So when I look at this graph, I think that it tells a good story that we've been able to manage rates and keep rates somewhat reasonable in that realm of what's expected across the Lehigh Valley. But we're starting to see every year those yellow bars creep more toward the right-hand side of the column. Looking at the programs that I mentioned over the last few slides, the wastewater regional program, the lead program, all the other capital work, did just a little bit of a trending on future rates. These are expected to be future rates in Allentown. And what I'm showing here are the historical rates from 2020 through 2024. I just normalized them for the customer rate. And we're breaking the rate up into the two parts of the Allentown rate. We have the rates that are included in the lease that increase just by normal inflation plus 2.5% type factors. And then the orange or brownish sort of bar on top, those are what we call capital cost recovery charges. So all of those projects, when they get completed, they get folded into the rate as a rate adder. So we capture that cost back and replenish the fund to be able to keep doing those projects. So you can see that over time, certainly the lease rates increase, but by a higher percentage, the capital cost recovery portion of the bill increases and creates even more pressure for our customers in Allentown.
And that's because the compounding will turn on the investment we've made this year. We have to spread that out over how many years then?
Yeah, it depends on the project, but most projects are being recovered over a 30-year time period. And if we're borrowing for the project, then the rate is based just on the debt service, and we're not compounding that. If we're able to cash fund projects, then we're using more of a blended rate of roughly 5% as a return, and that builds cash to do additional projects. So when we're talking about how we can address the programs and the workload, we also need to, I think, look at how we help LCA achieve these things and how we help our customers kind of bear the load of all these projects, and have a few strategies that we've been working on and talking about. First, related to asset management, and AJ's leadership in developing our strategic asset management plan last year has resulted in I think a good understanding of what our asset management program could be if we staff it properly, and the benefits that it could bring relating to really prioritizing projects, getting the best value for your investment, and lowest overall life cycle cost for our assets. And dealing with on the customer side in terms of rates and the support that customers will need due to the increasing pressure on rates. Certainly increasing our pursuit of grants wherever we can to keep those orange bars low, as low as we can on that prior chart. Helping us look at customer assistance programs in different ways, connecting with community action organizations and community partnerships to help provide support to customers that need it, and really focusing on that broad public engagement so customers understand why these investments are so important, and accept that the increasing cost is an important service that we provide. So all of that is to say that we have some gaps internally. If we're going to achieve the project load and we're going to achieve those other goals to make it all happen, we have 4 positions that we're recommending that we create now. And those are listed on the screen. I think we've talked about some of these before. First is a lead project manager that would be housed in the Capital Works Department. And essentially the primary role of that position would be to manage the program over the next 10 to 12 years of replacing 15,000 plus lead service lines in our system. That project is anticipated to cost about 200 million. AJ, is that right?
More or less.
I think I took that number from you.
Yeah.
And the level of detail of that project just can't be underestimated, dealing with individual homeowners and individual contracts and all the permits and paving and all those things. We also are recommending adding a program manager for the regional sewer projects that we have been talking about. So we're moving from planning into implementation. The I&I projects, the big plant upgrades, the big interceptor projects really requires some dedicated support internally to make sure we can get those projects done. We'd also like to add an asset management engineer, which would be an individual that could provide dedicated support across the organization to really drive those programs forward, get asset management plans done, incorporate asset management principles into our maintenance program development, and provide the support to AJ that he needs to make sure that program is actually achieving the goals. And then the last position that we're recommending is a position in communications and partnerships, really giving that focus to the grant applications, the customer assistance programs, stakeholder engagement work that's needed to help our communities understand the importance of the projects that we're undertaking, as well as acceptance of the rate impacts that we're going to see over the next 10 years. I'm gonna just pause there and see if there's questions or discussion about the 4 positions.
So the lead programs is 10 years project, right? So the KISS projects are 10 years project?
Yes and no. The lead program, yes, the lead program has a definite beginning and end. When the last lead service line is out, that project is done.
Sure.
For the regional sewer planning, we're expecting that 537 planning is always going to be needed. And we're using the 10-year timeframe for this plan because that's what DEP has indicated would be acceptable. The plan and the projects that we have envisioned based on future flows actually go out to the year 2050, but we're not including them in the plan at this time. And I think the other component of the regional sewer is that I&I programs are forever continuous programs that are going to need to happen to keep this.
So for the program manager, all the project that we're gonna have for kids, he or she will be the overall program supervisor or accountable for executions, going to our project management tools that we're getting. He or she would be accountable for executions, overall execution, delivery, milestone and everything. Is that correct?
That's the goal.
Okay. And for the asset management engineer, can you elaborate? I'm just trying to get my head, what is that role?
Yeah.
Gonna be?
I'd actually like to turn to AJ. He's given a lot of thought to this position and what he'd like to see to help his team achieve the goals.
Great, yeah, thanks for the question, Amir. Yeah, so we've identified a need for a doer to help with the asset management. So I'm leading, I've got guidance, I'm giving guidance to our organization, but we really need someone who can actually execute the work that needs to be done. And specifically, we're preparing asset management plans for each of our facilities. And it's a very sort of rigorous, time-consuming process. We score every asset, what its condition is. We score it on its criticality, and then we turn that into a capital plan. And right now, we've just started those. Just started one for Lynn Township, just about to start one for Klein's Island. And one of our engineers, Stephen Boone, who just joined us, is leading that. And it's been very effective, him in that role, but it needs to expand, and he can't sustain the level of effort that's needed. The other thing I like about it is that we've made a decision to do a lot of this work in-house. So some utilities will farm this out, consultants will come in, but we like the idea of kind of owning this. And I think it makes sense because we know what the conditions are of these assets. We'll get help where we need it. But the main purpose of the asset management engineer is to execute the work so that we can actually produce the end products that we want, these individual asset management plans. And yeah, that's the main thing. It's just in my role, I just don't have bandwidth to get into that level.
So from these roles, there are gonna be, somebody has to look at the synergy and overlap between your regular asset project versus KISS to make sure that there is not a redundancy or things that we are doing, maybe a little bit, expansions, we can cover both of them. Which one of those roles would be accountable for looking at that overlap and extracting the synergy?
Yeah, I mean, that would be my role. So,
Okay.
yeah, because both of those people would report to me. I would make sure that there's no gaps, there's no overlap. I mean, there may be some overlap, but not to the point where it's not.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Question, if this were a private business, the first question would be, are we gonna make more money by doing all this? And it's not a private business. But the point I'm making is, will this help grow the business and how we're gonna pay for it? And are we being extravagant? I look at Ed, we're gonna pay for all this. Does the current rate structure allow us to do this? Or we're being extravagant? And will the stakeholders still get their dividend check 4 times a year?
Yeah, that's a great question, Ted, and I don't think there's a super clear answer in terms of generating additional revenue. But there are, I think, some financial gains here in terms of the asset management program. The whole point of it is to lower your life cycle costs, and over time, you'll see returns on having a program that's really robust and integrated with the organization. Going up to the KISS Act 537 plan, the entire thrust of the plan is, number one, to achieve environmental compliance, but also to support the region's economic development that's going to occur, and making sure that new connections can be approved. So without the plan and without us achieving the projects, that can't happen. So it's not a direct one for one, but it is certainly supportive of the economic growth of the region. The lead program is all about public health protection and meeting regulatory requirements. So we're not necessarily going to make money on it, but we are, in conjunction with the last position and the pursuit of grants, trying to get as much grant dollars into the organization as quickly as we can to make those kinds of programs a little more affordable.
Okay.
I do have a slide on budget, so we'll get to that one. Questions
in the background?
Yeah. So good afternoon, everyone. Sorry I was a few minutes late. So Amir hit on the top three there, so I'll close it out hitting on the last one. Lisa, as I said before, I think this is vital, especially in that pursuit of grants, having a dedicated person to do that. Just to continue that thread, that pursuit of grants, would that person also be writing the grants? And then in turn, something that I know is the challenge of not just writing the grants and hopefully getting the grants, but then continuing through the process of managing them and ensuring they're closed out, because oftentimes that'll dictate whether an entity, an agency wants to fund you again through another grant opportunity if you're able to manage grants. So do you see that as kind of a core component of this position?
I think it can be, Sean. We're currently using external support for grant writing that we'd like to bring in-house and have an internal person have more expertise in writing those grants. Some of the components of implementing the grants are kind of the synergy between finance and the project team. So, for example, the lead grants, they're going through Penvest, and that requires a fair amount of Ed's time to work with the Penvest folks on the financial aspects. And then whoever the lead program or project manager will be in terms of completing the projects and ensuring the right process for receiving the funds through Penvest. That kind of happens at the project manager level, but certainly having the grant person who can kind of coordinate and oversee and make sure things are happening smoothly, and we're not getting phone calls from Penvest, for example, asking us, where are we on this or where are we on that, but the communication is really smooth and clean.
Great, thank you.
So just going back to what Ted asked, I think the first three is basically, besides project management, is bringing efficiency. Because if you have somebody as a project manager to make sure that project is running on time, on schedule, removing the waste. I think for the last one, at least in my opinion, we have to have a scorecard. Bringing a person for that last role, do we see a higher level of grant coming to LCA or not? Because to me, it's the last one, at least in my opinion, the measurement for that is more easier as a scorecard than the first three one. So something that we have to keep in mind, that we are adding in resources, is the benefit at the end. It's more money, more grant, whatever that it is part of that role individual. Something to think about as we go forward.
Yeah, Amir, I think that's a good point, and I think the grants, we've been very focused on, and I
Sure.
think we need to be that focused on it. But I also don't want to discount the importance of the community engagement and the customer assistance program. We have a customer assistance program, and it's kind of almost runs itself in a way, but our reach is pretty minimal. And being able to provide more robust support in multiple languages to the community will be important. And that's a different way, to show the level of reach of that program as well.
Okay, thank you.
I appreciate the questions. Just a couple slides to wrap up. I wanted to acknowledge that we're asking for something somewhat non-traditional. We're in the middle of the year and asking for new positions to be added. Why do this now instead of waiting for the budget season? And I'll say it's primarily driven by current workload as well as the pursuit of grants. So we have grant applications that are going to be submitted in the next couple months for next round of lead program. Also needing to pursue grants for our PFAS treatment program. The labor intensiveness of the lead program is just now beginning to hit us. And we're having some difficulty getting the programs off the ground because of that, and getting the support in-house now would be extremely helpful. And I think Phil could probably talk all day about how the projects are now transitioning from the planning stage into the implementation stage already, the sewer work. So this is happening right now, and waiting another 6 months just doesn't feel right for us in terms of being able to keep momentum on the projects. The team is stretched to do what we're doing now. So we're asking for that consideration now, and also want to be cognizant or aware of what what the future looks like as well. So I think we talked about last time some of the process improvement projects that we're working on in-house in terms of the ERP implementation, the Procore system for project management, other technology enhancements. We're keeping the pressure on those to get those in and see where we land in 2025. But we do expect that these projects are going to continue to challenge us in the years ahead. One person can't necessarily do it all, even adding a brand new person into the team. So we're going to have to be, very aware of the impact of these very labor-intensive projects, the lead program, sewer program in particular, but also the asset management team. And so I'm not saying that this is, that we'll be asking for more, but I just want the board to be aware that it's going to be an evolutionary process as we get new people in and see how far we can take the programs. Do we bring in more external help or internal help to make this happen? And get some benefit of the efficiencies along the way. So, budget. The good news is, is that we do not anticipate an impact to the 2024 budget by adding these positions, and that's a timing issue. We have some vacancies already that have to be filled, and the timing of bringing new people on, it'll be a couple of months till we could get them defined and recruited. So we don't see an impact to the 2024 budget. The 2025 budget, we have an estimate of about $600,000. That's total, fully loaded with benefits and everything. So I wanted to give that look. We have not looked at rates. We do that during budget season, but the lease rates are what they are, and wouldn't be changed by having these positions. However, I will say, especially the sewer projects and the lead projects, those personnel costs get rolled into project costs that are recoverable into the rate, those capital cost recovery charges. So we'll get some of it back through those mechanisms.
4 people fully costed 600,000?
Now I say fully costed, meaning salary and benefits, not necessarily any other overhead.
Okay. So,
Cost.
okay.
Lisa, does that funds for salaries, does that come out of all three funds or specific to
Yeah.
each one, or how does that work?
It depends.
Okay.
So, that's kind of what I was hinting at with the two programs, the lead project and the sewer program. Those will be capital project salaries that will go into the project cost. So when you approve a capital project, you see we have the construction contract and salaries included. So those project costs are borne by the salary costs are borne by the project. And if they're recoverable through the rates, then they get incorporated into the rate calculation that way. Other positions, the other two positions, really the asset management engineer and the communications and partnerships position, those would be more kind of spread through the organization.
A comment, representing Allentown. You said the rates are the rates, and that's what they are. Meaning that there's a formula by which we're allowed to, quite frankly, increase the rates. It doesn't mean we have to. Correct?
Right, it means we have to as long as the financially.
But my point being is that the cost rise, we increase the rate, but it doesn't say anywhere that the rates must be increased by whatever the formula is every year.
The lease is very specific, so I'd have to look at the language to be really clear about that. If we wanted to deviate from what's in the lease, I think would have to have a conversation about that. What we do have in the lease agreement, which was part of the 2020 renegotiation, was a mechanism to give rate relief in the
Yes.
future if we
Where I'm heading.
if we hit certain financial targets. So that we have, but we're not anywhere close to that at this point, because it really relates to having capacity within the rates to do the capital projects, which we don't currently have. We're still borrowing for projects.
Going back to the graph where you compared our rates,
Yeah.
Allentown rate with everybody else around here. I noticed that the far left end was the city of Bethlehem. Just jumping real quick here, and toward the right end was Nazareth, or Easton was Easton above us. I'm just envisioning a Lehigh Valley News.com story about rates in the Lehigh Valley regarding water rates and how why are they the same, why are they different, what's happening, what's going on. I think that's perfectly reasonable, and I just want to make sure that the first blush at this is what's the magic potion that Bethlehem has. That I'm sure there's a good answer for this, but that we don't have.
Yeah.
And certainly Easton doesn't have. And I'm just picking Allentown, Bethlehem, Easton because it's easy to get a hold of.
Sure.
But I just want us to be aware of these things and be able to respond to those things in a very logical, obviously honest way.
Yeah, I think that we can speak very clearly and accurately about the yellow bars, which are our rates and what the costs are that drive those. Not as much more conceptually on maybe some of the others. But I will say that the Allentown rates, we've talked about this before pretty much every budget season. There is a significant driver in the Allentown rate basis, which is the debt service on lease. And that's not a cost component that other communities might not have, right? So that could be one of the drivers. The other driver, I believe in Bethlehem, I'd have to look at the timing on it, but they fall under Public Utility Commission review. And so they don't do rate increases as often because it's complex and expensive and difficult to get rate increases through that process. So I don't know if this chart reflects their most current rates based on their last PUC line. So you might see them jump and then slide back because they take more time in between rate increases. So there's a lot of factors that go into.
Yeah, please, so if I might add, the other thing too is, everybody likes to compare the rates to their neighbors. That's the thing to do, but, EPA, I think, has out there some numbers of, 1% of median household income, for water rates and sewer rates, and there's some other national type benchmarks that probably, if you really wanted to get into a debate about it, you could throw onto this graph. And even if the median income in Allentown is $50,000, that would be 1,000, 2%. We're still well below that. So, and again, I'm just throwing out some numbers from my brain. I don't know what they are these days, but that's probably, that's something that's used a lot, especially when you're applying for grants or you're doing cost estimates or things like that. So that's what I think to keep in mind.
I just want us to be aware of that.
Yeah.
I think.
Absolutely.
You can't leave this graph without pointing out the far right extreme too, that the two for-profit management companies running the South Whitehall and Nazareth are extremely high,
Yeah,
extremely high compared to the government or municipality run facilities.
Good, thank you.
While you're on that, the last group would be costs.
This one?
Yes, the proposed personnel additions you're talking about, are they reflected in this chart? Or they obviously 2024 were no cost, but 2025, is that reflected in these charts?
So this chart is reflecting the Allentown rates. And so the lease rates are increasing by the terms of the lease. So it's regardless of cost, the lease rates just increase. It's really in these in the project and the yellow, or I'm sorry, the orange toppers, which is the capital cost recovery, that we might recover some of those salaries in those orange bars because they'll be folded into the project costs.
Thank you.
So the decision on a pretreatment plant, does it have effect on the people that trying to hire, have to hire more, or I just want to hear your view on that. If you go this way or that way, what impact it would have?
I think the pretreatment plant will absolutely affect how we think about staffing one way or the other, because the operation of the facility needs to change. So whether it's a contract cost change with Jacobs or it's a total project, facility change and we operate it totally differently, it's going to have an impact. The other piece that we've been talking about is an impact to how we manage the actual users. So we currently don't have the direct relationship with the industrial users. If we change that, then we might need more support in terms of sampling or inspections and those kinds of things. So there's a lot of variables on that one. Okay. I think we're coming to the end, folks. Yes, very last slide. We covered a lot of ground today, but I wanted to kind of end here, which is we don't have a budget impact this year, so we don't have a budget amendment that we're asking for, but because we do tend to have the board approve new positions that have a budget impact as part of the budget process. And this doesn't follow that same process. We're asking for approval to fill these 4 positions now, and we'll further define them and get them filled this year. That's the request for today. It was 4 positions. I appreciate this discussion today.
So do you need a motion?
I heard that, yeah.
Yeah. I would like one.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Jeff and seconded by Amir. Are there any questions? All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, you have, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate the support and the conversation. I just wanted to call out that both Kevin and Sean are now on. They were not on when we did roll call. So I believe that means we're up to 7.
Joined at 12:30 if you want to record that.
Thank you.
I think it'd be appropriate at this time to update and provide to the board an organizational chart.
We could do that.
Okay, moving on to the next topic. Papers. All right, we have nothing underwater. We do have a couple under wastewater. The first one being Suburban Division. Spring Creek Pump Station upgrades. Seeking approval, see blue documents in our Word package and digital package date is 12/16.
Chuck, you want to introduce?
Yep, thank you, Lisa. So Amy Kunkel is going to present this project. I'll just summarize it. What this project is, it's the construction phase of primarily electrical project at Spring Creek Pump Station. Spring Creek Pump Station is nearly 30 years old. It is located off of Spring Creek Road near Ancient Oaks. The control building is located off the rear parking area of Lehigh Commons retirement community. And the mechanical station is located a stone's throw from the little Lehigh Creek, literally about 10 feet from the creek. And that facility houses the wet well. Anyway, an electrical condition assessment was performed by Keystone Engineering over concerns that operations had over the variable frequency drives. And that basically formed the basis of design for this upgrade project, which, as I said, is primarily electrical in nature. But Amy's going to talk to you about the entire scope of the project. But that's the nature of the project. So I'll turn it over to Amy.
Okay, so as Chuck said, we had a condition assessment done last year after getting concerns from operations. And they broke down different equipment into 5-year, 10-year, and 20-year timelines for some of the things. So we took the items that were in the 5-year timeline, primarily the VFDs and the mini power center that's located down at the wet well center. And then added in some other operational concerns. The non-electrical stuff is going to be replacing one of the weir gates that goes from the channel into the wet well, and then adding another gate that can isolate the station from the Western Lehigh interceptor heading down the stream. Adding an actuator to one of those gates, replacing an exhaust fan in the dry well portion that came up as part of the assessment. And replacing the seals on the hatches. Down at the wet well, there's 9 hatches for access points in the wet well. And the seals are corroded. It's not watertight anymore, so we're going to replace them. We're actually replacing one of the hatches that suffered damage when we suspect a fisherman ran over it, but it's bent, so we're going to replace that as well. There's some minor sealing of cracks in the dry well to improve water tightness. But again, the majority of the work is the electrical, primarily the 3 VFDs. They're 250 horsepower VFDs. And it's kind of an unusual arrangement down there. When it was built, the station was built in the floodplain right next to the creek, as Chuck said. The control building is about 800 feet away. So the VFDs are located up in the control building, and a new cable has to be run from there down to the wet well, which is a pretty big deal from what they say, getting somebody to pull that cable. We had our engineer, Verdontis, they used to be Borton Lawson. I still tend to refer to him as Borton Lawson. That's what I got used to. They did the design, put it out for bid. 2 contracts, the general, which is the gates and the actuators and the hatches and that miscellaneous stuff, and then the electrical contract, which is the larger of the 2. We received bids We had 2 bids for each contract. Low bidders were both contractors that we've worked with before. We're familiar with them. We're comfortable with their quality of work. So they are the contractors that we're asking for approval from. In addition, we have an authorization, a professional services authorization for Donna's for the construction engineering part-time inspection during the construction. I think that covered it all. I don't know if anyone has any questions on the project.
So if I could just add, so this pump station, kind of like Park Pump Station, it was originally built as a relief facility to just convey wastewater during peak weather periods. And like Park Pump Station, we're having to operate this station more or less continuously now, to avoid overflows in the interceptor downstream of where the pump station is. So this pump station, I told you where it's located off of Spring Creek Road. It connects to the Little Lehigh interceptor near Keck's Bridge, right downstream from our meter station number 5. So it's a very critical facility. These VFDs, if they fail, and like I said, they're almost 30 years old. If they fail and we can't operate the station, we have overflows downstream. So it's very important station.
Yeah, and just because it is so critical, a lot of thought during design did go into how do we keep this running while we're making these replacements, replacing each VFD one at a time, running the cable, so that we always have 2 pumps available. So there is some coordination, that effort that has to go into making these improvements.
What's the capacity of the station?
The station was designed with a capacity of 7 MGD. It does run a little bit higher than that because the original design was to have the Iron Run pump station built 2, and both would pump into the same force main. Iron Run was going to be 5, Spring Creek would be 7. Because we don't have that Iron Run, Spring Creek can run at a little higher capacity, so it can get about 8.5.
Yeah, Iron Run was gonna tie in to the force main, the Spring Creek force main just downstream of the station, so they calculated that total head, assuming both flows, but we have less total resistance, basically, that's why it pumps higher, a little higher than this.
Is there some high-priced equipment or something? Because it seems like the electrical prices are pretty high for the amount of work that's listed here, and just.
Yeah, well, I can let Amy go. These are very expensive. These are 250 horsepower, so they're big units. They have the HVAC component. They need cooling. They have integral cooling, and I think that mini power system is really expensive too.
Yeah, I don't have the breakdown of the prices, but those 3 components, and then also again, the pulling of the cable and the effort going into that.
If they're using existing conduit that runs under the farm field, and apparently the cables is very hefty and very difficult to pull, so that added to the labor charge. There's a level of risk associated with that.
Question, my always favorite question. You have 2 bids, the bids are widely apart. The first one especially, like, Mars and Venus bidding this project. I'm sure you just scoped the project to make sure that the low bidder has everything required.
Yeah, the low bidder who, as Amy said, we've worked with on numerous projects in suburban and the city. They understood the scope of work. I think the other bid, Ted, is like kind of like a non-bid where they just throw something at it.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
But your low bid was within budgets, where the budget was, I'm assuming. And the same with the electrical, you just scoped. I'm just curious whether you ever just scope both contractors to make sure that like you mentioned, a big chunk of the cost here, the VFDs, which are a fixed price. Everybody's paying the same for those. So the difference in the bid is other stuff, which is labor and miscellaneous materials. And you wonder how they come to such radically different conclusions.
And it could be with regards to the other electrical bid, it could be that maybe the second lowest bidder, they have a lot of work on their plate and they just threw a number at it. If we get it, we'll deal with it. I know, the second lowest bidder, they are familiar with the station. They do, I believe they do emergency maintenance at this station, just
They
for
do some-
regular maintenance. So that they did understand the work, but Diefendorfer, our engineer did talk to them. They're fine with their number. Because we did note the discrepancy. It's pretty high. It's a pretty large amount of money left on the table.
I do want to add for the general contract, Blooming Glen Contractors, they were the company that did the 2018 improvements to Spring Creek Pump Station. So they're very familiar with the station. They actually already replaced one of the gates in the station. The price is a lot lower than the second low bidder, but they of any contractor are very familiar with.
Thanks,
Station.
But, well, we were a bit surprised because you'll see on the last page of the memo, page 3 of the memo, the prices came in under the engineer's estimate and a good deal amount. So we don't get that.
With this, I'm sensitive about these issues because having been there, that if you make a mistake, sometimes that's reflected in a very low price.
Yeah,
And you want to make sure no one gets banged up on these things.
yeah. But they're fine. Both low bidders are comfortable.
Thank you.
with their bids. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Just a minor thing that if we had some damage done by a potential fisherman, or do we put a protection around the facility so that we don't have any future damage?
That is a little difficult given the location of that station in the floodway. That we can't fence it in because it would hang up debris. We do have bollards,
Operations did put some posts around some of the gates as much as they could to try to
It's a
protect.
critical facility, so you don't want to have any damage being done.
yeah, there are bollards. I think that there were not bollards at the time when somebody apparently drove over one of them. And I think that the submergible issue, I think that came up that was raised by DEP about these hydrants.
That place gets flooded considerably.
Yeah, so they need to be able to withstand a certain depth of water.
And Lehigh Commons, didn't they change their name, or is that the most recent? name?
Oh, you know what? They may have, that's what I saw on
Complete care of the,
Google Earth.
something different.
Yeah.
Okay, right, we have before us a capital project authorization request for construction phase of a total amount of $1,120,323.02.
I hate the 2 cents, but like, I knew somebody would bring it up.
I didn't say.
But nobody else like carried on the significant figures except for that one contract. So then we have to put the significant figures on all the numbers.
Okay, that includes a construction contract, general phase for Blooming Glen contractors of $170,723. And a construction contract number 2 for electrical work to Orlando Diefendorfer Electrical Contractors for $824,602. And also a professional services authorization for the construction engineering to Verdantas for $55,000. Again, total $1,120,323.02. Need a motion in a second.
Second,
Right. Motion by Ted and seconded by Norma. Are there any questions?
Oh, AJ, if this had been, if your asset management project was up and running smoothly, would this thing have popped up earlier?
Yeah, that's the whole point of it, yeah. You're exactly right, yeah. Finding the places with, poor condition and critical, yeah, this definitely would have popped up.
Any other board questions? Any questions at all? All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you very much, Amy. Thank you. All right, moving on to the second item under wastewater, we have Allentown Division. Emergency declaration, Pines Island digester gas line repair, seeking approval. Green documents in our board package, digital package pages, page 17, sorry. This is retroactive.
Yes, and Andrew Moore is actually on vacation, but calling in to walk us through. I believe he's able to walk us through, and if not, we also have Ryan Geisel, who's special projects manager, works with Andrew, very familiar with this. Andrew, if you're able to join us, we'd love to hear from you. And are you with us?
Yes, I am here. I was actually just going to let Brian give an overview of.
Oh, okay, very good.
Go from
Brian.
Yeah, this is a emergency declaration to expedite the repair of the secondary digester gas withdrawal line at Pond Island. So we had a clean out that just ended beginning in June. Outside contractor finished up. So after they finish up, we do a internal inspection of the piping and concrete and stuff like that, just to check out the internals of the digester. And during that, we noticed the gas withdrawal line had gotten crushed by the roof. So we suspect that the bracket holding the gas line vertically failed, causing a misalignment of that pipe. And then ultimately, when the roof got lowered during the dewatering process, it crushed it down. So we're looking to get the digester back online pretty quickly. So we wanted to expedite the repairs. We called Blooming Glen, who we use a lot. So they were able to get out, get scaffolding set up by Beth Allen. And they have all the, it's like 6-inch stainless pipe and stainless brackets and all that. So they have all that stuff on site. And they have a mobile welding department. So they were able to get it done within a few days. We inspected that. Get the digester back online in time. Like we had an internal schedule getting it back online by the 14th, so we're able to stick up with that schedule. So yeah, we estimate conservatively, we estimate it'll be around $50,000. Yeah, we're still waiting on the final invoice.
So Brian, is that a floating roof, or is that just because there's not a pressure in there anymore that it?
Yeah, it's a gas holding roof, so it floats normally and it can store gas a little bit. Has a large skirt around it so it can hold gas, lift up and hold gas. But during the cleaning is when you like fully lower it all the way down onto the corbels. So yeah, it had never gotten as low as when we dewatered it fully. So thankfully the gas line never completely broke or sludge would have entered that line. So just kind of warped in place, but yeah.
Change the design so the next time that you're fully lower the roof that it's going to not fail.
Yeah, so Blooming Glen, so there was only one bracket in the vertical and it wasn't stainless. So the new repair, we added an extra horizontal and 2 vertical brackets, all stainless. So we're confident that it should hold up a lot better than the previous.
So just to be clear on the emergency declaration, we asked the board to retroactively approve an emergency declaration when we estimate the project cost to be over $50,000. And that helps us with the purchasing process where we had to bypass normal purchasing procedures.
Right, thank you.
And that goes back to June 6th.
Back to what?
June 6th.
All right, so we need a motion for retroactive approval of the emergency declaration from the June 6th repair work done at the Pines Island digester gas line repair.
So moved.
Thank you, Norma. Seconded by Jeff. Any questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ron. All right, on the agenda, we don't do number 6 at this time, but we do 7. It is the Ed Show. So. Monthly project financial review.
Are you ready yet?
Sure.
Let's talk about how we did for May and month and year to date. We look at net income for the month. If you look at the Q2 forecast, you can see pretty much across the board, we expected to be on the negative side across all 3 funds. Actually, we were very consistent being negative across all 3 funds on the actual side as well. However, the good news is, we were a little bit favorable on suburban water. Suburban wastewater was a little bit more unfavorable than we thought. And city division finished almost $1 million favorable. So overall, we're almost $1 million favorable in total to LCA. So 2 of the 3 funds, despite having negative, turned out to be favorable variances. Cash flows is a much different story. We had projected and forecasted that we were going to come in positive across all 3. We did exactly that. And on all 3 funds, we are seeing favorable variances with respect to the forecast. So the only other comment I want to make is going back up to the net income on the city division. You see, that's a negative number. We finally recognized the loan closing and all the accounting for the loan closing. So there was some significant loan costs to get a very favorable financing that we had in the forecast. We just exceeded it or didn't exceed what we thought. So we came in favorable, but that's in the month. Now keep in mind when we did the budget, so this will play out. When we did the budget, we thought we were going to only do 1 year at a time because that's traditionally how we look at the CAT plan. So this is for 3 years of borrowing. So year to date, we're favorable on suburban water in terms of net income, still stayed on the negative side of wastewater, city division, positive variance. As you look across the forecast variance, we're favorable in water. We're close on wastewater, still a little bit negative, but close, and still good on city division. So overall, we did pretty well with respect to forecasts and cash flows. Again, all 3 funds we're projected year to date to be favorable. We're holding that pattern on the actuals. And again, all of them are looking favorable with respect to forecasts. So we had done a full year forecast during the month. Really didn't see significant changes from where we were, and that was favorable to budget on water. Wastewater, we kind of stayed favorable against budget, not by a lot. City division, because of the borrowing change in the methodology for the borrowing, we now go negative against budget variance because of the loan costs and et cetera as part of the refunding. We did not have that in the budget that way. Cash flows, for full year, I'm saying we were kind of a little bit better than budget on water, really the same on wastewater, and city division is almost 40 million. That's something wrong.
And it jumps out at you.
Yeah, I'd say when I'm looking at that, that's kind of not the right number. So.
And is that the cash impact of borrowing for 3 years instead of?
It is, I think, yeah, you picked up $55 million instead of $8 million. So theoretically, there's $37 million gap there. And I guess, so when you look at that, we would have been favorable anyway, so. Yeah, that's.
Switch the numbers from.
Well, the numbers are Right, it's just that really the budget's wrong because we took a different approach with the budget to borrow for 3 years instead of the way we budgeted it. So you get a hefty variance, but it's basically because you borrow 3 years worth of money. Okay, in terms of suburban water, income year to date, we're favorable in the budget. You can see where most of that variance is coming from operating revenues, mostly in the industrial sector. Operating expenses were a little bit higher than we had forecast. Interest income was up a bit and interest expense was actually a little bit lower than we thought. Just looking at full year, we're favorable to budget for the full year, and operating revenues, operating expenses are lower, and non-operating, it's all stacking up to lead to the 328,000 favorable variance. On cash flows, 189,000, kind of got a mixed bag here. You got some help from operations because of the net income that was favorable. We were a little bit lower in debt service. We really just took a draw on the remaining portion of the suburban water financing from 2022. So interest expense is, debt service is still a little bit lower. And then CAPEX was up by $246,000, and then we've captured a little bit more on the interest income side. Compared to budget, basically we are up 331, and it's mostly in the operating or the cash from operation side, basically from the net income, but a little help from higher interest income. In terms of all of the metrics, debt service coverage ratio looks good with respect to targets. Operating ratio, we're pretty much right on with what we budgeted. And days cash on hand were 407 days compared to 180. So we're looking good. We think we'll be at about 324 at the end of the year. Suburban wastewater, not much of a variance in terms of net income year to date. And this one, operating revenues were down a little bit. Operating expenses were up, and we saved money on interest income and lower interest expense. On full year, we're pretty much up across the board on all and generating 171,000 favorable variance. Cash flows year to date. We're $641,000 better than forecast year to date. Not much of a variance in cash from operations. You get some help from lower debt service. You get some help from lower CAPEX on this one, and getting some help from higher interest income. Cash flows compared to budget, pretty much a wash here between cash from ops and higher interest income. Metrics, debt service about 5, so that's better than target. Operating, and we think we'll be 4.8 at the end of the year. Operating ratio, we had budgeted 0.94. We're actually better than that, even though it's slower than what we traditionally like to get at 1. We think we'll be at 9.4 for the end of the year, and days cash on hand 305 days versus 180. City division income year to date, we're up by almost $913,000. Actually favorable on the operating revenue side, favorable on lower operating expenses, favorable on interest income, and kind of erode a little bit of that with higher interest expense. Income for the full year, well, we talked about the effect of the loan costs on it compared to budget, so there's pretty much what's driving the unfavorable variance to budget. Cash flows year to date, wow, it's all stacks up good in terms of cash from ops is good, lower debt service, higher or lower CAPEX this time and higher interest income to generate that variance to cash flow. Again, keeping in mind about the borrowing timing. And then for full year, we will be up because of the big change in borrowing amounts, so. Metrics. 1.63, we're better than the 1.20. We're down a little bit to the budget target for now. We think it'll climb back up to 2.20, so it's kind of a timing thing. Operating ratio, 2.15, it's better against internal target, better against the budget target. And right now we're at 526 days on cash on hand, so. Your scorecard, Suburban Water hit 13 out of 14. Actually, there was two funds. If you look at Suburban Water, Suburban Wastewater, were year-to-date operating expenses are just a little bit unfavorable to forecast. On Suburban Wastewater, as we went through, I noted that the operating revenues were down a little bit. This was the only fund that exhibited that. And Suburban Wastewater, while we budgeted 0.94, we were less than 1, but we're holding our own against budget. And then Suburban Wastewater also has negative net income, and we're a little bit lower than forecast. So you got a score of 13, 9 for Suburban Wastewater, and cities really just got net income is less than budget. And that's because of low costs, so just kind of summarizing it, we really didn't make any significant changes for Suburban Water and Wastewater in terms of where we were forecasting. As we talked about, the city division now has that bond issue effect in it. So that's causing an unfavorable variance to budget. That's, the only thing we can do with that is narrow some of that gap as we move on through the year. Cash flows was better. Year-to-date performance on net income and cash flows is good for all funds. Suburban Wastewater, we're $1,000 off, so I'm nothing to write home on that. And we're still seeing better than we expected invested balances and rates, so that's going to help us. And I think at this point in time, we need to do a little bit more in-depth look at the CAPEX forecast as we start to get into Q3. See where we are with CAPEX. Right now, I don't have anything that really concerns me.
Good. Thank you for your report. Any questions by the board? Any questions? All right. Thanks, Ed.
Yep.
All right, moving on to the next topic on our agenda, monthly system operations overview. Digital board packet pages 31 to 40, and it was included within our board packet, and it's white documents. Andrew or Brian?
Chris is also on, so
Or Chris.
yeah. Andrew, you want to lead us off?
Yep, I'll take it from here. You can hear me all right?
Yeah, we can.
Perfect. All right, so in front of you, you should have the May 2024 operations report. The first page is the safety report, and there were 2 injuries in May. There is a typo there. It says 6 total. That is incorrect. It should just be 2. Both of those injuries were basically from walking on uneven ground. One was at a well station where an employee stepped on uneven ground and twisted his ankle a little. And the other was on a customer's property where he tweaked his knee. Now, both of these injuries were, sorry, someone speaking.
Ted just sneezed. You're good.
Oh, sorry. There was no time off for either of these. Both of the employees were back the next day. There's no time off at all. Moving on to page 2, water production. Both in Allentown and the suburban divisions, it's slightly up from April. As we start to hit the peak season for water production, we'll probably see it up a little bit more going into June and July. On the wastewater side, wastewater is slightly down. We're at 34 million gallons per day at Klein's Island. As you can see, precipitation, we had 3.77 inches. This is actually a little bit less than what we've been seeing. Luckily, there was no bypasses or SSOs reported in any of the systems. We did, however, receive a notice of violation for the Sand Spring wastewater treatment plant. This was an outline of basically all the permit exceedances that I've been describing over the past few months, dating back to November 2022. If you recall, we do have a project that was approved by the board back in March, which is essentially to intensify the treatment process there using IFAS. This project should be up and running by, we believe, August or so. So I'm expecting any permit exceedances to really dwindle down as we approach later into fall. The emergency declaration that you heard earlier will be reported in the next report for June 2024. And as we move to the page 3, which is any permit exceedances or any other non-compliances, there was one reported, a permit exceedance for Heidelberg Heights. This is sort of a unique problem. It was actually for not meeting the percent removal for CBOD. We still have a lot of INI in that system, which dilutes the influent, and with that, the concentration of BOD or CBOD is actually a lot lower than we see in any of our other plants. So it's very difficult to meet the actual percent removal, which is 85%. And I believe we were right around 79% or so for May. The only other permit exceedances that we experienced were at Sand Spring. We had 2 that were related to ammonia nitrogen. We had 1 that was total nitrogen, and then we had 2 which were CBOD related. We haven't had many CBOD related permit exceedances lately. We had a little bit of a storm that sort of washed out some of our solids, which caused a small disruption for about a week or so, but we're heading somewhat back on the right track until we have the IFAS installation going. Other than that, there was no boil water advisories and no other permit exceedances or bypasses. So happy to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Andrew, this is Amir. On those uneven level that we have at our well station, are the tape color or something that people can notice those things?
I've actually been speaking to the new safety manager about this. So the 2 incidents that did occur, they were actually on like grass. So it wasn't necessarily like pavement, but I have been talking to the safety manager about finding any inclined surfaces that are paved and either spray painting them yellow or putting some type of lines or hazard awareness to those.
Thank you.
So my new concern area is at Sand Spring, actually, with now getting an NOV, and we've been talking about this for some time. And what do we have in place, and when will it be fixed?
That's the.
I mean, I heard Andrews talk about the technology.
Yeah, that's the intensification project that Andrew mentioned, that the board authorized a few months ago. It's right now, the status of that project is the contractor is ordering equipment and materials, and everything will be installed in August. So by September, we should be back into compliance.
And how is the DEP looking at our reaction to that and our performance, as well as our plans?
They approved that plan, that project to augment the treatment process and add this heavy carrier media, we call it, for that gives the bugs additional area to to create a slime layer, and it increases the organic treatment capacity of the tanks without increasing the size of the tanks.
So it doesn't have anything to do with wet weather or heavy rains or anything like that. It's just the contact area that the
Yeah,
boats have to.
it doesn't have anything to do with hydraulic loading. This is capacity for organic, to treat organics.
Go ahead, Andrew.
I was gonna say, just having the microorganisms have something to grow on, so the little, what we call pasta wheels, it's a fixed film basically, so you're not as likely to wash out any of that biology or solids when you do have wet weather type events where the hydraulic capacity may be pushing its limits. So that's a great benefit to having this type of treatment.
I was gonna just add one thing about the schedule. So like Chuck said, we are starting up in the fall, but the cold weather, winter period is really where we're gonna know whether or not this technology really did the job we expected. So we'll have some initial results to share, but it's the winter that when we'll know whether or not this actually did the job.
That's when the nitrification process slows down because of the temperature of the wastewater. Nitrification is the conversion of ammonia to nitrite and nitrate then.
We have a similar problem like this, and had to add heaters or anything like that out.
That was at Arcadia.
At Arcadia.
Yep,
Yeah,
and that was
so
exactly cold weather
do
nitrification.
we have any plans as a backup in case we see that we're not making performance that we would?
It shouldn't be an issue here because the tanks are partially in ground. The tanks are over 50% in ground. At Arcadia, the tanks are basically at grade. So we had to insulate the tanks, and the nature of the waste coming in is cold because it's industrial, so it's colder. It's colder by nature at Arcadia.
Sure.
Yeah, but it should be where you have tanks that are in ground, it's less of an issue.
Okay, just suggest maybe somebody think about, if it doesn't work, what we might do, and it sounds like maybe insulation heaters or something like that. But, you know, counting that it's gonna work entirely for new technology, new medium. Maybe not the best thing to rely on that 100%.
Okay.
No. Yeah, I think I can answer that question. When we did this study originally, this is what ended up being recommended, but the other alternative was building a third basin, which is a very expensive. I don't know that heating is gonna do the job. The recommendation was a third train.
I hate to get to the point where we go through wet weather or what cold weather, we find that it didn't work, so.
Yeah.
All right, okay. Anything else on any questions? All right, thank you, Andrew.
Oh, thank you.
Enjoy your vacation.
I will do my best. Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Anything else on that? Any questions? Moving on to staff comments,
I have nothing further.
solicitor comments,
No comments, thank you.
public comments on any topics whatsoever.
No, thank you, Brian.
Thanks, Jenny. All right, board member comments. All right, we do not have any executive sessions, so at this point in time, we are adjourned. Thank you very much for being here and the reports and the work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
You're welcome.